Rushed for a crucial meeting, the young millionaire spotted a homeless woman clutching a baby in the pouring rain. Acting on impulse, he handed her the keys to his home. When he returned, he was extremely frightened by the scene that took place before his eyes. In bustling Seattle, USA, as Joel strolled through the halls of one of the nation's premier architectural events, he couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between the opulence surrounding him and the underlying purpose of the evening. Despite the glitz and glamour, the event served a noble cause. It was a charity gala aimed at raising funds for social housing initiatives. Esteemed architects, Joel among them, had generously contributed designs and blueprints for these projects. The evening was dedicated to garnering resources to bring these plans to fruition. Amidst the elite, who saw the event as another opportunity to flaunt their wealth and status, Joel stood out. Renowned for his architectural prowess, his presence was as captivating as the groundbreaking projects he championed. Despite achieving great success, people noticed a shift in his demeanor following the sudden loss of his young wife in an accident and his commitment to caring for his ailing father. Some labeled him as distant, yet those who grasped life's gravity understood it as his coping mechanism amidst adversity. Amidst the gathering, Joel encountered Jessie, an esteemed figure in architecture, renowned for her extensive expertise and achievements in the field. "Joel, it's truly remarkable to see someone of your caliber here," she remarked with a discerning gaze. "I've heard that, despite your demanding profession, you've dedicated yourself to your father's well-being. That's commendable." Joel offered a polite smile, nodded in acknowledgement, yet couldn't shake off the sense of detachment amidst the facade. Sensing his unease, Jessie remarked, "These occasions may appear trivial, but they often unveil more than anticipated. What brings you here today, Joel? It seems there's more than mere professional networking at play." Joel's lips curved into a melancholic smile. "Being here feels more like an obligation than a desire. You see, my life has never revolved solely around architecture. It's been shaped by broader human experiences and the wisdom I inherited from my father." Joel paused, reminiscing about the challenging times. "Despite the hardships, my father always found ways to lend a hand. He was a modest man, yet his heart was immense. Raising me single-handedly, every sacrifice he made became a guiding principle for me." Jessie listened intently, admiration evident in her demeanor. "It's uncommon to encounter someone who upholds such principles, especially amidst the success you've achieved. Your father must be an extraordinary individual." "He is," Joel responded, a glint of pride shimmering in his eyes. "He did whatever it took to support us, from assisting neighbors with repairs to offering tutoring sessions. He often said that a man's true wealth lies not in possessions, but in his ability to enrich the lives of others." Jessie nodded, grasping the profound meaning behind Joel's words. "That explains a lot about who you are, Joel, and how you lead your life and career. Many here could learn from that." Joel smiled, thanking Jessie. "I just try to live in a way that makes my father proud. He taught me that the real architecture of life is in building bridges between people, in creating spaces of understanding and support." Jessie smiled with true admiration. She had also started her life in a very simple way. She studied hard and reached one of the highest levels of the profession, but despite everything, she had a sadness in the depths of her eyes. He had not started a family, and that part of his life was kept very private. After leaving the architecture event, Joel headed home, a place that had become more of a refuge than simply a living space. Upon arriving, he found his father, who was now living with him due to his illness, watching a late-night program. Despite health challenges, Mr. Neal maintained a vibrant spirit and an active mind. "How was the event, son?" he asked with an interested look. They managed to raise quite a lot. It was very good, despite the atmosphere of people who think they are gods because of their money. It was a success. I even talked to Jesse about the importance of our work for society. Joel replied, sitting down next to his father. After the conversation, Joel got up and went to the kitchen. "I'm going to prepare something to eat. Do you want anything in particular?" he asked over his shoulder. "Anything is fine, son. Don't bother too much on my account," his father replied with a grateful smile. Later, as he helped his father settle in for the night, Joel mentioned his plans for the next day. "Dad, tomorrow morning I have to travel for that meeting about the new project. I'll leave everything organized here, and Mrs. Rosa promised to take a look for you." Joel's father, settling comfortably on the bed, looked at him tenderly. "You're a good son, Joel. Go and do what you have to do. I'm proud of you." Mr. Neal had faced countless difficulties in the past. After Joel's mother abandoned them, he took on the enormous responsibility of raising him alone. Despite financial adversity, he always prioritized Joel's education, firmly believing it was the path to a better future. All the money he earned was invested in his son's studies. With determination and dedication, Joel took advantage of every learning opportunity, becoming the renowned architect he is today. Even after achieving success, he never forgot his father's struggles and sacrifices, always staying by his side and caring for him with the same love and gratitude he received in his childhood. The next morning, Joel awoke early, preparing for the important day ahead. He dressed meticulously, choosing an elegant suit, suitable for the crucial meeting in a neighboring city. As he made his way to the car, a torrential rain began to fall. The driver, already familiar with Joel's itinerary and habits, waited. "It looks like we're going to face some rough weather on the road, Mr. Joel," commented the driver as he watched him approach. Traffic in the neighboring city was chaotic due to the heavy rain. Joel's car was moving slowly along the congested road. He was watching the rain patter on the glass, lost in thoughts about the meeting, when a scene on the roadside caught his attention. A woman, clearly a beggar, was holding a newborn baby, desperately trying to shield it from the relentless rain. It was an image of desperation and vulnerability that touched Joel's heart deeply. Without hesitation, Joel told the driver, "Stop the car, please. I need to help that woman." The driver, knowing Joel's compassion for the homeless, warned, "But Mr. Joel, you're going to get wet and ruin your suit, and we still have a meeting to get to." Joel, determined, replied, "I don't care about the suit or the delay. That woman and her baby need help now." He opened the car door and stepped out into the pouring rain. As he approached the woman, he asked, "Can I help you? You and your baby can't stay here in this rain. Do you have somewhere to go? A home?" The woman, still surprised and protecting her daughter from the rain, quickly replied, "No, we have nowhere to go." Joel felt an urgency to act. Without hesitation, he ran back to the car in the pouring rain and asked the driver to open the glove compartment. From there, he pulled out a bunch of keys. Turning to the woman, he briefly introduced himself and asked, "What is your name?" "Roxana," she answered, hugging her daughter closer to protect her from the rain. "Roxana, this is the key to my father's house. It's near here. He is living with me for now, so the house is empty. You can stay there with your daughter," said Joel, extending the bunch of keys to her. "I need to leave now because I'm late for a meeting, but my driver will take you there." After handing the keys to Roxana, Joel quickly returned to the car. Already soaked from the rain, he informed the driver, "I'm going to continue on foot to the meeting. Please take Roxana and the girl to my father's house. It is close by, and make a stop at the market. Buy everything they need, food, clothes, diapers, anything." The driver, familiar with Joel's acts of kindness, nodded readily. "You can leave it in my hands, Mr. Joel." I'll take care of everything." Joel's driver, after bidding him farewell, returned to where Roxana was sheltered from the rain with her daughter. As he approached, he said kindly, "Come on, don't worry. I will take her to a safe place. Mr. Joel wants to help you and your daughter." Roxana, however, looked at the driver with a mixture of fear and distrust. "I don't know you. I've already seen on television what can happen. I can't trust you like this," she said, squeezing her daughter to her chest. The driver, understanding her excitement, tried to reassure her. "I understand your fear, but I assure you that Mr. Joel is a good-hearted man. He only wants to help." To demonstrate his sincerity, he opened his wallet and showed some photos of his own family. "See, I am also a father. I've been working with Mr. Joel for years. He is a man who truly cares about others." Roxana looked at the photos and the driver's sincere expression. Still cautious, but sensing that perhaps this was a real opportunity for refuge and safety, she finally agreed to go with him. Carefully, she got into the car, protecting her daughter from the rain while the driver took them to Joel's father's house. But first they stopped at a market to buy food and diapers for the baby. In the late afternoon, after a long and productive meeting, Joel emerged from the building to find his driver waiting for him. As soon as he got into the car, Joel asked, "How did Roxana and the baby girl do? Did they get to my father's house okay?" The driver replied, "Yes, Mr. Joel, but I left them at the beginning of the street. I thought it would be easier to maneuver the car." Joel, a little surprised by the driver's decision, reprimanded him slightly. "I should have left it at the door of the house, especially in this rain and with a little girl." He paused for a moment, reflecting. "But that's okay. It's been a busy day for all of us. I'll stop by tomorrow to check on them and make sure they have everything they need." Joel continued as he looked out the car window thoughtfully. Concern for the welfare of Roxana and his daughter occupied his mind, but he felt he had made the right decision in helping them. Arriving home, Joel had barely opened the door when he was greeted by Mrs. Layla, who was taking care of his father in his absence. She seemed to have some unexpected news to share. "Mr. Joel, your father, Mr. Neil, took a copy of the keys to your house and went there as soon as you left. He said he wanted to spend a few days there. He was feeling bored and a little better," she reported, somewhat hesitantly. Joel was surprised by the news. "He left on his own, but he knows he shouldn't," Joel began, worried about his father's health and safety. Mrs. Layla interrupted him. "Yes, he left alone. He said he waited for you to travel because he knew you wouldn't leave him like that. He seemed determined and said he felt well enough to be alone for a few days." Upon hearing about his father's sudden decision to go to the other house where Roxana and her daughter were sheltered, Joel immediately thought of the possible complications. Without hesitation, he asked the driver to take him there urgently. As the car sped through the streets, worry grew in his chest. Arriving at the house, Joel saw the door open and an ambulance parked outside. His heart raced as he saw his father being loaded onto a stretcher. Joel ran inside, panicked, trying to figure out what was happening. He approached the paramedics and introduced himself. "I'm his son." "What happened?" said Joel, trying to ease the tension of the moment with a slight smile. The doctor, looking at Joel, calmly explained, "Your father had a stroke. Fortunately, his wife was here and acted quickly. She called the ambulance. She saved his life." Joel felt a whirlwind of emotions. Relief that his father was alive, gratitude that Roxana was there, and deep fright at what could have happened. He accompanied the stretcher to the ambulance, determined to be at his father's side at this critical moment. He, still in shock, watched the doctor carry his father to the ambulance. As soon as the vehicle left for the hospital, he turned back to the house, looking for Roxana and his daughter. Joel approached Roxana and her daughter, trying to control his nervousness after the scare with his father. But the worry was still evident on his face. "Roxana, I don't know how to thank you for everything you did. The doctor thought you were my wife, said Joel, trying to relieve the tension of the moment with a slight smile. Roxana, sensing the seriousness of the situation, replied in a soft tone. There is nothing to thank, Mr. Joel. I did what Anyon would do. I was in the right place at the right time. Joel looked at the purchases she had made, noting that they were only basic items. I see you only bought the essentials. You could have taken more, you know. You don't have to limit yourself, he commented, worried if she had everything she needed. Roxana looked at him, a mixture of gratitude and excitement in her eyes. I didn't want to abuse your generosity. You have already done so much for us. There was a moment of silence in which Joel felt a deep human connection with Roxana. Roxana, I would really like to know more about you and your daughter. How did you come to this situation? If you are willing to share, I would like to listen, said Joel, expressing his genuine desire to understand and help. Roxana sighed, seeming to decide if she should open her heart. She looked at her daughter, then at Joel, and began to speak. I never knew my mother, she began, and I grew up with a father who seemed more like a stranger, drank too much and barely noticed my presence. Joel listened attentively, sensing the strength in her words. I wanted to study, you know, but my father never allowed it. I would read in hiding after he went to sleep, dreaming of a better future. Roxana paused, remembering those moments. Time passed and life only got worse. My father was sinking deeper and deeper into drink. I tried to help, but I could not. He was a gruff man who scared me most of the time. Until one day, I met someone. She continued. He seemed perfect, kind. We were together for a while, until I got pregnant. I was so scared at the time, but I thought I would finally have a family. Roxana let out a heavy sigh, her voice trembling with pain. But as soon as he learned about the baby, he left me high and dry, vanished into thin air, and I never heard from him again. I managed to keep the pregnancy under wraps for a while, but when my old man caught wind of it, Roxana paused. He blew up, didn't even give me a chance to explain. He kicked me out with nothing. How did you make it through? Joel inquired, his tone filled with concern. I pleaded, scraped by on the streets, and when my little girl arrived, it was the folks on the streets who came to my aid. I was scared, didn't trust anyone or anything, but I had to tough it out for my daughter's sake. Joel gazed at Roxana, witnessing not just the anguish and fear etched on her face, but also an extraordinary resilience. You're incredibly strong, Roxana. Your journey is one of tremendous hardship, Joel remarked. Roxana offered a sad smile. I had no other option. Life wasn't kind, but I couldn't throw in the towel. For my daughter, I'd brave it all over again. I don't know how to repay them for everything, she added, her voice choked with emotion. When I saw all her father's books, I felt like I was in heaven. I loved to read, but I never had the opportunity to have access to so many books. Joel smiled kindly. You can read all you want, Roxana. Consider yours too. As he prepared to leave, Joel turned to Roxana, holding out an envelope. Here is something to help with expenses, he said softly. Roxana looked at the envelope, noting the weight of the paper. She opened it cautiously. Her eyes widened as she saw the amount of money. Joel, this is a lot. I can't accept all this, she stammered in a trembling voice. Please accept it, Joel insisted with an encouraging smile. You need it more than I do. Buy clothes, food, everything you and your baby need. Tears welled up in Roxana's eyes. I don't even know how to thank him. He's giving me more than help. He's giving me hope. There was a moment of silence during which Roxana watched Joel, a thought popping into her mind. "May I ask, is Joel married?" Joel sighed, a shadow passing over his face. "I was," he began. "My wife died in an accident only a month after our marriage. That was 3 years ago." Roxana put her hand to her mouth, surprised and saddened by the revelation. "I'm so sorry, Joel. I had no idea." He shook his head slightly. "It's all right. It was hard, but I learned to live with it. The pain never goes away completely, but we learn to move on, don't we?" Roxana nodded, feeling an unexpected connection with Joel through their shared experiences of loss and struggle. Joel stood up, grabbing his keys. "Well, I have to go now. But please make yourself comfortable here, and if you need anything or anything at all, call me." "Thank you, Joel," Roxana said sincerely, "for everything." He nodded, a sad smile on his lips. "Take care of yourself, Roxana. And remember, you are not alone." With those words, he walked out, leaving Roxana sitting, wrapped in a mixture of gratitude, hope, and a new sense of not being so isolated in the world. Joel returned home, his mind full of thoughts about his encounter with Roxana and her story. The next day, he visited his father in the hospital. His father was in stable condition, but still needed constant care. Sitting by the hospital bed, Joel began to tell him about Roxana and his daughter, the details of the day she felt ill, and how it was she who called the doctor and saved Mr. Layla. He also talked about how difficult her life had been. Joel's father listened attentively, his face showing signs of emotion. "You did a very good thing, son. Roxana seems to be an incredible and brave woman," he said in a weak but proud voice. "It is good to see that you have grown up to be a good-hearted man. I thank God for not abandoning me when I asked for the strength to raise you alone." There was a moment of comfortable silence between them, each lost in thought. Then Reuben's father, looking thoughtful, spoke again. "Don't you think it would be better to bring Roxana and the baby to live closer to us? They could stay at our house. I'd like to have more life around me, and you wouldn't have to travel so far to see them." Joel pondered the suggestion. The idea of bringing Roxana and his daughter nearby seemed cozy, and the possibility of his father having more company at home was also appealing. "That's a good idea, Dad. I'll talk to Roxana about it. I think their presence would bring more joy to our home." Joel's father smiled, excited at the possibility. "It would be wonderful to have a little girl at home. It's always so quiet when you're working." With that new idea in mind, Joel said goodbye to his father, promising to think seriously about the proposal and discuss it with Roxana. He left the hospital feeling hopeful, thinking of the possibilities the future could bring for them. After a long day of working on a big project, Joel was exhausted but determined. He drove to the house where Roxana was staying, thinking about the proposal he had in mind. When he arrived, he found Roxana arranging some things in the living room, with the baby playing quietly on the floor. "Roxana, I have something important to discuss with you," Joel began, sitting down next to her. Roxana looked at him, curious. "What is it, Joel?" He took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. "My house is big, and since my father got sick, it has been very quiet. He likes to read a lot, and I thought that, as you also like to read, you could keep each other company. Besides, he could help you in your studies, if you wish." Roxana seemed surprised by the proposal. "You mean, to live in your house, me and my daughter?" "Yes," said Joel. "It would be amazing to have you and the baby at home. I think it would be good for my father. He would feel less lonely, and you would have a safe place to stay, plus access to all the books you want." Roxana was silent for a moment, clearly pondering the offer. That would be incredible, Joel. I don't know how to thank you. It would be a great help to me and my daughter, and I would love to be able to study more." Joel smiled, relieved and happy with her answer. "Then it's settled. Let's do that. I think it will be good for all of us." With a smile of gratitude, Roxana accepted the proposal and ran to gather her and her daughter's things. Once they finished, they returned to Joel's house, his heart full of hope for the opportunity to be able to study and be someone in life. Upon entering the house, Roxana could not hide her surprise. "Wow, Joel, your house is amazing. You really are a talented architect," she exclaimed, looking around admiringly. Joel smiled gratefully. "Thank you, Roxana. I hope you and your daughter feel comfortable here." In the following days, the relationship between Roxana and Mr. Layla, Joel's father, grew closer and closer. He had a vast collection of books, and with great enthusiasm, he began to show Roxana the ones he considered most interesting. Mr. Layla picked up an old book and said, "This was one of my favorites when I was younger. I think you will like it." Roxana took the book, glancing through its yellowed pages. "It looks fascinating. Thank you for sharing this with me, Mr. Layla." Realizing the special connection forming between them and Roxana's dedication, Joel decided to spare his father's caregiver. Roxana had insisted on taking over Mr. Layla's care when Joel was not at home. She cared for him with a mixture of respect and affection, and Mr. Layla greatly appreciated her and her daughter's company. Roxana always emphasized how much she enjoyed her new life. "I really like taking care of her father, Joel. He has been so kind to me and my daughter. It's the least I can do." Joel thanked him with a nod. "You are now part of the family, Roxana. My father and I are grateful to have you and your daughter here." As Roxana settled into Joel's home, he made sure to offer her not only a home, but also financial independence. One day, as they were talking in the kitchen, Joel broached the subject. "Roxana, I've been thinking," Joel began, "I'd like to pay you a salary. You've been amazing taking care of my father and the house, and I think it's important that you have your own income." Roxana, surprised, looked at him. "Joel, that's not necessary. You are already providing me with a home and everything my daughter and I need." "I know, but it's important to me that you feel free and independent," Joel insisted. "I want you to be able to buy what you need for you and your daughter without having to ask." Roxana felt a lump in her throat. "Thank you, Joel. This means a lot to me. It has been years since I have felt so valued and free." From that moment on, Roxana began to receive a regular salary from Joel. For the first time in years, she felt what it was like to have financial autonomy. She could buy clothes for her daughter, choose new books to read, and even save money for the future, without the feeling of dependence or the need to ask for permission. This new freedom brought a sparkle to Roxana's eyes, and she felt more confident and secure. Joel's kindness and respect not only provided her with a safe home, but also the opportunity to rebuild her life with dignity and independence. Over time, the relationship between Joel and Roxana became more intimate and affectionate. Joel enjoyed spending time with Lily, Roxana's baby, and they often went for walks together. During these moments, Joel shared his passion for architecture with Roxana, and she showed genuine interest, absorbing every word. Roxana would also devote herself to reading the books Joel recommended to her, deepening their connection even more. The affection they shared began to transform into something deeper. Roxana, in her heart, already felt in love with Joel, but she kept her feelings to herself, unsure of how to proceed. One day, Joel found himself talking with his father about his feelings. Sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, Joel confessed, "Dad, I think I'm in love with Roxana. It's the first time in years that I feel that way, but I don't know how to act." Joel's father, with an understanding smile, looked at him and said, "Son, life is too short for doubts. If you feel this way about Roxana, you should tell her. You deserve to be happy." Joel reflected on his father's words. "Do you really believe? What if she doesn't feel the same way? You'll never know unless you try, and from what I see, the way she looks at you says a lot," his father encouraged. Inspired by his father's advice, Joel decided he would talk to Roxana. He wanted to express his feelings and find out if the affection he felt was reciprocated. With a mixture of nervousness and hope, he planned how he would broach the subject with Roxana, hoping, more than anything, that she would share his feelings. That night, after putting Lily to bed, Roxana sat in the living room reading when Joel approached. He sat down next to her, his heart pounding in his chest. The comfortable silence was interrupted by his soft but hesitant voice. Roxana put the book aside and turned to him with an attentive expression on her face. "Of course, Joel. What is it?" Joel took a breath for courage. "I, in recent times, have felt something more for you, more than friendship. You have brought a new light into my life and into this house. I care for you and for Clarina, more than I ever imagined I would care." Roxana felt her heart quicken, surprised and moved by his words. "Joel, I have feelings for you too. You've been amazing with us," she replied, her voice trembling. Joel took her hand. "Comfort, I want to be here for you, not just as a friend but as someone who really cares. I would love to be part of Lily's life, to take care of her as if she were my own daughter." Roxana felt tears forming in her eyes, moved by Joel's sincerity. "That means a lot to me. Lily and I already see you as part of our family." Since that night, the relationship between Joel and Roxana blossomed. As Roxana began to attend social and professional events with Joel, people's reactions were varied. There were snide comments circulating, some referring to Roxana disparagingly as the beggar that Joel took in. In several places, people looked at them with disdain, muttering among themselves. However, Joel remained indifferent to these judgments, always at Roxana's side, who felt more and more confident and secure with him. At one such event, an elegant cocktail party at an art gallery, Mrs. Jessie, a well-known figure in Joel's social circle, approached the couple. With a polite smile, she greeted them. "Joel, Roxana, it's a pleasure to see you here. I have heard about your relationship, and I want to congratulate you," he said, maintaining a cordial posture. Roxana thanked him, somewhat tense under Jessie's attentive gaze. There was something about the way Jessie was watching her that made her uncomfortable. But Roxana kept her composure. Jessie continued, still with her critical gaze fixed on Roxana. "It's always a pleasant surprise to see new faces at our events, Roxana. You have a very unique—" "Thank you, Mrs. Jessie," Roxana replied politely. "Oh, before I forget, I would like to invite you to a dinner at my house next week. It will be a pleasure to receive you," said Jessie, looking at both of them. Joel hesitated for a moment, feeling a certain moral obligation to accept the invitation, even though he was not particularly thrilled with the idea. They exchanged a quick glance, Roxana seeking her silent opinion before replying, "It would be a pleasure, Mrs. Jessie." "We accept the invitation," said Joel, offering a polite smile. Jessie seemed satisfied with the response. "I look forward to welcoming you. It will be a lovely evening." "Until then," she said before walking away, leaving Joel and Roxana alone again. As soon as she was gone, Joel looked at Roxana. "I'm sorry. I thought we should accept. I hope it's okay for you," he commented, a little worried. Roxana nodded, supporting his decision. "It's okay, Joel. I think it will be an interesting experience," she replied, trying to sound optimistic. Together, they continued to enjoy the event. Although the prospect of dinner at Jessie's house remained in their minds, mixing feelings of curiosity and caution. The day of the dinner at Mrs. Jessie's house arrived, and Joel and Roxana prepared for the occasion. Upon arrival, they were impressed with the beauty and grandeur of the house. It was evident that Jessie was a renowned architect. Every detail of the decor was carefully planned and executed to perfection. The aesthetics were impeccable, blending modern and classic art in a harmonious way. Upon entering, Jessie greeted them warmly and invited them to sit down. Roxana, while admiring the interior, could not help but notice a certain emptiness in the atmosphere. Despite the beauty, the house seemed to lack warmth and welcome. Jessie lived alone in that huge mansion, and the space did not convey the feeling of a happy home. "What a beautiful house, Mrs. Jessie," commented Roxana, trying not to show her perception of the atmosphere of the place. "Thank you, Roxana. I put a lot of thought into every detail," replied Jessie with a proud smile. Jessie watched Roxana intently, with an enigmatic look on her face. At one point, she began to talk about her personal life, revealing details of a difficult past. She mentioned how life had been unfair to her in her youth, leaving Joel and Roxana confused about the purpose of that conversation. Joel, sensing that there was something deeper behind Jessie's words, asked her to be clearer. "Mrs. Jessie, excuse me, but I'm a little confused. Could you explain why you invited us to dinner tonight?" Jessie sighed deeply, as if gathering courage, and got up to grab a photo album. When she returned, she opened the album and showed a picture of her from many years ago, visibly pregnant. Joel and Roxana looked at the photo, still not understanding the context. "Where is the child?" asked Joel, trying to connect the dots. Jessie, with tears in her eyes, looked directly at Roxana. "The child is here. It's you, Roxana." Joel and Roxana were shocked by the revelation. Roxana looked at the photo and then at Jessie, trying to process the magnitude of those words. Am I your daughter?" Roxana asked, her voice trembling with emotion. The revelation that she was Roxana's mother dropped like a bombshell, leaving everyone at the table in shock. Joel, confused, expressed his disbelief. "That seems impossible, Jessie. Roxana never knew her mother. How can she be sure she is your daughter?" Roxana, still trying to process the situation, looked alternately at Joel and Jessie, unable to formulate words. The idea that the woman sitting across from her could be her mother was something she had never imagined. Jessie, her eyes filled with emotion, began to tell her story. When she was young, she knew Roxana's father. He seemed like a good man despite his problems with alcohol. "We were together and I got pregnant. But after Roxana was born, he changed. He became aggressive, and the day we left the hospital, he took her away. He disappeared without a trace." Everyone at the table listened in silence as Jessie continued. "I tried everything to find her. I hired investigators, spent fortunes, but it was as if she had vanished. There was no trace, no clue that would lead me to my daughter." Roxana, absorbing every word, felt a mixture of emotions. Anger at the absence of her mother from her life, struggled with an understanding of the pain and despair Jessie had experienced. "So, the man who raised me stole me from you?" asked Roxana, her voice trembling at the magnitude of that revelation. Jessie nodded, tears rolling freely now. "Yes, Roxana, he took the greatest treasure of my life from me, and I've spent all these years searching for you." Feeling the tension of the conversation, Roxana, still stunned by the revelation, looked directly at Jessie and asked, "How can you be so sure that I am your daughter? Why only now?" Jessie, with an expression of relief mixed with pain, answered, "When I first saw you at the event with Joel, something inside me stirred, a hunch I couldn't ignore. You have a mark on your hand, exactly like mine. That was the last physical sign I remembered of you." Jessie continued, her voice choked with emotion. After that day, I asked a researcher I've worked with for years to find out everything about you. The pieces began to fall into place, and he finally found your father. He was drunk on a street, a shadow of the man I knew. The investigator approached him, offering him more drinks, and at that point, he got your father to talk. That's how he confessed everything, telling the truth about how he had taken you from me. The fact that you were never registered, of him not working officially so as not to be found. He was completely out of his mind, living in hiding, trying to erase any trace that could lead back to me. Roxana listened in silence, absorbing every word, every detail. It was as if a veil was slowly lifting from her life, revealing hidden truths she had never imagined it possible. He lived a life of hiding in fear of being found, and he kept me in that shadow with him, said Roxana, understanding the magnitude of what Jesse was relating. Joel, looking at Roxana and then at Jesse, expressed his surprise. It is an incredible story. Hard to believe all this. Roxana, her voice choked with emotion, said, I never imagined that something like this could be happening in my life. It's a lot to absorb. Jessie, her eyes filled with tears, nodded. I know, my dear. It's a shock to all of us. Then she added, despite everything he did, I asked for your father to be taken to a support home. There he was, diagnosed with schizophrenia. He will spend the rest of his life there. Joel, trying to better understand the situation, asked, You did that, even after everything he did to you and Roxana? Jessie sighed deeply and answered, Yes. In spite of everything, he is a sick human being. He deserves compassion. I spent years with a lot of anger towards him, but today, seeing my daughter here in front of me, the happiness I feel is beyond me. I can't think of anything bad from now on. Roxana looked at Jessie, a feeling of gratitude mixed with confusion in her heart. Thank you for that, Jessie. I'm still trying to understand everything, but I appreciate that you took care of him. Despite everything he did to me, he's still my father. After these revelations and exciting encounters, Roxana's life changed radically. She began to visit Jessie's house regularly, and the two strived to build the relationship they had lost. During one of her frequent visits to Jessie's home, Roxana felt the joy of a new beginning. In a moment of intimate conversation, Jessie expressed her wishes for Roxana's future. You always had an interest in studying more, didn't you, Roxana? She asked, serving you on the terrace of her spacious home. Roxana's eyes sparked with hope as she replied, Yes, I've always dreamt of studying architecture, but the opportunity never came my way. Jessie's smile radiated warmth. Well then, it's time to turn that dream into reality. I want you to enroll in the top architecture school in the country. I'll handle everything. Roxana was momentarily speechless, overcome with emotion. I don't know how to thank you, she said, tears welling up in her eyes. Jessie reached out, grasping Roxana's hand across the table. After all we've been through, it's the least I can do. And there's more, Jessie continued. I'm building a room for Clarina right here at home. I want to be there for every milestone, something I regret not having with you. Roxana, now openly weeping, felt a rush of happiness and relief. That means the world to me, Jessie. Clarina will adore having a grandmother like you. In one of their many heartfelt exchanges, Jessie opened up to Roxana while Clarina played in the garden. My greatest dream, once I found you, became simply being your mum. But hey, I get it. It's all fresh, and I respect your space. I'll work hard to earn that mom badge. Touched by Jessie's words, Roxana responded warmly. Jessie, you're already doing so much. Every little thing you do means a lot to me. I'm sure we'll only get closer from here. As time went by, their bond grew stronger naturally. Roxana became a regular at Jesse's place, where Lily loved to hang out. With Lily's infectious laughter filling the house, it felt like a real family, something Jesse and Roxana had longed for. Fast forward a few years, Roxana, now nearing the end of her architecture studies, was gearing up for graduation. After overcoming numerous challenges, she was about to mark a major milestone. The graduation ceremony was a full house, with teachers, family, and friends all there to celebrate Roxana's achievement. Roxana strolled down the aisle toward the stage, a rush of pride and gratitude coursing through her. Scanning the audience, she sought out three particular individuals: her husband, ever steadfast in his support; her father-in-law, a stalwart presence akin to a second father; and, of course, Jessie, her unwavering muse in the field of architecture. Taking her place on the stage, Roxana gazed out at the audience, ready to deliver her speech. "Today, I stand before you not solely due to my own endeavors, but also due to the unwavering support of some truly special people," she declared, her voice brimming with emotion. Continuing on, she spoke of her husband, his constant encouragement propelling her towards her goals. Then she acknowledged her father-in-law, whose embrace and fortitude had sustained her through the darkest of times. Finally, her eyes rested upon Jessie, and she paused momentarily before uttering, "And of course, my dear mother, Jessie. Mom, you've bestowed upon me more than just an education. You've given me a home, love, and the family I've always yearned for." Roxana's words resonated deeply with all present, but none more so than Jessie, whose tears flowed freely as she heard herself referred to as Mom. She buried her face in her hands, overcome with emotion. Jessie couldn't hold back her tears as Roxana finished speaking. Her words, addressing her as Mom, stirred emotions Jessie had never felt before. It was a moment of pure connection, flooding Jessie with love, gratitude, and fulfillment. The pain of separation and years of searching had finally dissolved into joy. After the ceremony, Jessie rushed to embrace Roxana tightly, bridging the years of distance between them. "You've completed me in ways I never dreamed," Jessie whispered. Roxana, holding her mother, replied, "Mom, you've taught me the essence of family and love. I'm endlessly grateful." Walking away from the graduation hand in hand, they felt rejuvenated and hopeful. They knew their lives would be brighter from that moment onwards. Their journey was proof that a mother's love conquers all, persisting through any obstacle life presents. If you liked this story, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Your support enables us to continuously deliver captivating stories nearly every day. Stay tuned for the next tale coming up on your screen. Thank you for your tremendous support. Until next time.